It is, isn't it? Hello, Naimul.
Nice. Hi, Joachim. Thank you so much for being here and joining us on the session. Very interesting session. Our participants are very eager to learn about you, about Almi Invest. Let's start with you, a short intro, like a little bit on your background, if you want to, and then we dive right into the topic.
Sure. I'm not sure where you are right now, Naimul, because in my part of Stockholm, it's actually very nice weather.
Okay. I checked it 3 hours ago. After that, I
Well,
had
yeah,
started
okay.
meeting. So
You need
the
to check
morning
it
was.
much more often. So very welcome, all of you. It's a pleasure being here. And thank you, Naimul, for inviting me and Almi Invest for having this opportunity to talk about Almi Invest. I recently joined Almi Invest. I became CEO of Almi Invest February the 1st. So I've been here in 6, 7, or 8 months or so. So I'm starting to build at least some kind of knowledge about our portfolio, what we're doing, how we're operating, the team, and so on. And I'm super glad I got this opportunity to be CEO of Almi Invest because we have a fantastic team, we have a really interesting portfolio, and we are Sweden's most active investor.
Okay.
So it's interesting. So my background, I have a combination of being an entrepreneur, investor, and acquiring companies.
Mhm.
My previous employer was Bisnode, the leading data and analytics company in Europe, where I was chief strategy officer and heading up the strategy and also our M&A process. So we did acquire quite a few companies across Europe. And before that, I was part of KTH Chalmers Capital, a venture capital fund investing early stage. And before that, I was running a software company named Focal Point. Today, they would call it a SaaS company, but back then, the coin was not invented yet, so it was more of a software company. So I like tech, I like entrepreneurship, and I like finding out how to win with limited money and resources. I think that's really, really interesting. And of course, a big challenge for a lot of entrepreneurs. So it's a fantastic space to be in. It's a great team, and Stockholm and the rest of Sweden is a fantastic market for startups.
Excellent. I was wondering, like, Almi Invest has invested in so many companies, being most active investor in Sweden. For startups, is it difficult to get funding from Almi Invest? If we could start there.
Well, I'm leaning towards saying no, because we have invested in almost 800 companies so far.
Okay.
And if we have invested in that many companies, it can't be that difficult, can it, Naimul?
Mm-hmm.
Well, joke aside, I mean, we operate all over Sweden.
Okay.
About 10% of our venture capital is allocated to Stockholm, so we're all over Sweden. And we're looking in all regions, and we're looking at all aspects of entrepreneurships and all different segments. So we are actually looking to find really good companies everywhere. But of course, it is very difficult to get venture capital for all entrepreneurs. And we never do investments on our own. We always do investments with a co-investor.
Okay.
So I would say that it is still difficult, of course, for companies to get venture capital. But if you are prepared, if you have a really good pitch, if you know what you're talking about, of course, it's going to be much easier.
Okay. You said you're all over Sweden, and then 10% of this is in Stockholm, which essentially means that the company should contact the regional office. Is that how the process works? And
Correct.
Okay.
So we have about 3.5 billion Swedish under management. 50% of that approximately is EU funding.
Okay.
And because of EU rules, we are divided into 8 regions. Okay. It's very confusing for the entrepreneurs. But if you want to get EU money, you have to play by the rules.
Okay.
So we have 8 regional funds. Each is about the same size. But if you run a company in Gothenburg, you need to contact our investment managers in Gothenburg. And if you run a company in Malmö, you need to contact the investment managers in Malmö because they run their own separate fund.
Okay. So all of these funds are okay.
Again, a bit confusing on the market, but that's the way it is. And if you're confused, whoever to contact, just call anyone and we will help you.
Okay. One more point, because and this is something which spontaneously came to my mind because you were saying that you're all over Sweden. We also have another organization which is called Almi, which is all over Sweden with several offices. So are the two organizations connected in some way, Almi Invest and Almi, or is one an extension of others? If you could elaborate, I think there will be great information for our listeners.
Yeah, I understand that too is a bit confusing, but Almi, you can basically say that Almi is two parts, the advisory and the lending part on the one hand, and then you have the venture capital arm on the other hand.
Okay.
And we do collaborate a lot. I mean, a majority of all companies we invest in, they are looking for additional capital, and that capital can be any combination of venture capital and debt. So we often refer our companies to Almi, the lending part.
Okay, and you define your space as VC.
Yes.
That's enriching. Okay.
So we're part of the same group, but with two different business areas.
Okay. Very interesting, and we've already started getting some questions, and I'll pick up something which just crossed my mind when we just started the discussion, and that is let's switch to the entrepreneur side. What stage of entrepreneurs are you looking for? Of course, VC is not very early stage, but how do you define early stage, or what's the earliest an entrepreneur or a startup can approach or get in touch with?
Yeah. Defining early stage is, of course, very difficult. But we normally invest, say, 2 to 6 million in the first round, maybe up to 10, maybe a little bit more in total. And that, of course, kind of defines what is early stage.
Okay.
And since we always co-invest with another investor, our 2 to 6 in the first round becomes 4 to 12 or even more. We don't have to take 50%, but we don't take more than 50%. Okay.
So that's very interesting for founders here about the point that you're making for co-investors. And a question for Joachim, who would be a typical co-investor together with Almi Invest? So Iva Bhati is rating that question. Let's take it right we get on the topic.
Sure. I think we have co-invested with basically all investors we have in Sweden right now. We have a network with over 1,000 business angels and other small VC firms. So often the companies, they come to us, they do the pitch, and we help them find a co-investor. Or they approach another investor and they say, well, what about bringing in Almi Invest as well? So as an entrepreneur, you can approach us or another co-investor. But in order for us to be able to invest according to all the rules, we need to have a co-investor.
Okay. So co-investor, when you say co-investor, is it a hard line that you draw that minimum X% should be coming from the co-investor side, or the number of co-investors? Are there any hard lines that you draw, or is it an open thing?
Not normally, at least 50% for the co-investors.
Okay. To 50% for co-investors. And then would you recommend to the startups who are seeking early stage capital to, because you're all over Sweden, maybe you're much easier to reach than another VC, which is probably in one area or focusing on one thesis or one vertical, for example. A typical scenario, what would be a better service model for the entrepreneurs, that they first go out, if they're ready for the stage that you mentioned, that they reach out and seek their portfolio, try to build some leads with VCs, or should they take an early stage contact with you guys straight?
They can do both. I mean, find whatever way is best for the company. I mean, there is no general guideline on what way is better than the other one. I mean, we have on our website, we have some guidelines, which we call Pitch Your Startup.
Okay.
And I think that's very valuable guidelines where all entrepreneurs can go and see if they are ready to pitch the startup to Almi Invest. And if they are ready to pitch it to us, they are ready to pitch it to other investors as well. So I think that's a pretty good guideline.
Which means maybe a good way is to go directly on the website and send in your digital pitch. And
that's
Almi
one way
Invest.
of doing it.
Okay.
And if they need, sometimes you need someone to talk to, and all the
Okay.
contact information is on our web.
Okay, got it.
But then again, the more prepared you can be before you contact us, the more we can support you.
Okay, very good. And I'll go back to the points you were making about the difference between Almi Invest and Almi. And we said that Almi is, the regular Almi is advisory and lending focused mostly, and the VC arm is Almi Invest. So if a startup needs a combination of pitching and also get some feedback also, do you think it's a good idea to engage with both Almi and Almi Invest?
Absolutely. We're the same group, we're the same family, we're state-owned, and we do collaborate a lot. So it's better to contact us, although you're unsure who to contact, than not to do it at all. I mean, we used to getting those questions all the time, and we're happy to support all the entrepreneurs.
Okay. Brilliant. But I think when we started discussing about early stage, you said early stage is a difficult thing, and you're right. Early stage generally world over, it's a broad word, but very difficult to put into like what exactly does that mean. So if we take it from the entrepreneur side, when do we think an entrepreneur team could be ready to pitch to a VC like you, like Almi Invest? Like, do they need to have a definite product with X revenues, X customers? Are there any metrics they have? So let's go a little bit there and see if we can get something for startups. Okay,
so we invest in all types of businesses.
Okay.
So it's very difficult to give a general guideline, because if you're in the pharmaceutical industry, you don't really talk about having the products ready and the number of customers, for example. But if you're building apps, I mean, that's a completely different story. I would say that read our guideline. I think that's very important. And all entrepreneurs, they need to understand that when they raise venture capital, it's an unconditional road to an exit. So they are creating a company where they promise to deliver value to the investors. And they really need to prepare to run a company like that, because it's not just, it's a different kind of company to run. So I wouldn't say that we have specific requirements in general, but when you talk to the investment manager and you get the expertise in the specific type of business, you will get more information. Okay.
So your advice is go deep into the Almi Invest website, check out how to pitch, read the guidelines that should prepare the entrepreneurs to pitch their case. And then the other thing that you're mentioning is that, and that I've seen also in my advisory journey, that entrepreneurs have not thought through the exit side. It really hits so that preparation needs to be there when they're pitching to VCs.
Yes.
Okay.
And the entrepreneurs, they can just send us an email or give us a call, and we can give them, quick feedback. Okay. But then again, the more prepared they are, the more quality of a discussion we can have.
And since you are a co-investor, how difficult is the process to actually go into a company? Because then there are 2 or 3 decision makers on how this process will work. So how is that situation ironed out? Typically, is that a very long process for a startup that they wait on collecting 3-4 different entities together and then get the round closed? And what does that journey look like? If you would like to share something.
It's very difficult to answer that, because it all depends on the company and the investors and the interest in the company. But sometimes it's very quick, and often it's kind of slow, at least from an entrepreneurial point of view. But then again, if you have more investors, you also have hopefully more companies, more people who can back you in the long run. And you have a broader network, you have a wider knowledge, and so on.
Okay. You said that you are quite, like, when we talked about geography, it's all over Sweden, and then you're saying all over sectors, and you said it could be pharma company, or it could be an app company. Let's take a typical app company scenario, or somebody who is building, let's say, a consumer technology based digital startups. In that case, would indicators, what could be some of the indicators which need to be there for this early stage that you're talking about? Do they need to have a product physical which is working in the market?
I would say it also depends a little bit. I mean, if you have some kind of micro proof that your business model is working, it's going to be so much easier. But then again, it might be a company that's looking for a limited amount of fund that are very close to launch, and then it might be good enough. But then again, we also consult with our co-investors. So it's not just what we would like to see from the company, it's also what the co-investors would like to see from the company. So it's a combination of the two. I understand I'm being very vague here, but it is a very vague business list.
Okay, completely understood on that side. Let's go a little bit into impact over the years. Have you seen that coming into the decision-making table on the VC side? Like the startups need to have some sort of linkage to sustainable development goals, or in some way be ground up, have a business model which is impact-driven from basic. Like, does that guide your thesis, or is that becoming a part of Almi? I also see here there is a thesis question. We'll take it in a little while, but let's talk about impact a little bit.
Sure. We, on top of the 8 regional funds that we are managing, we also have a national green tech fund.
Okay.
And the national green tech fund is about 650 million Swedish, and that is all about impact investment. It's we only invest in companies that significantly reduce carbon dioxide emissions.
Okay.
And in all our investments we do in all our funds, we do have a strong sustainability focus. We also see that other companies, other investors, other venture capital funds are raising more money for impact investments. So I actually think that is a big trend right now.
Okay. And how would so would you then would this then mean that it's good for startups to think through their impact model when they are coming to pitch to you to improve their chances?
Yeah, I think that is important, whoever they try to pitch to, because I think that is something that investors are looking for right now.
Okay. So
and also the other way around, to not being sustainable and to not have sustainable business models, that's going to be very difficult for those companies trying to raise venture capital in the long run.
So okay, that's a good advice for startups. And let's talk a little bit about teams, like, because we are talking early stage. It could be a situation that there's a researcher who has come up with a great idea, has already filed a patent for that. The company is in very early stage, maybe not yet established, but the idea is great. Like, how strong is the focus on team generally? Because you have background before this as investor as well. When we talk about startups at early stage, is team a make or break factor, or is it something which can be built over the startup journey when you're reaching out to investors?
Well, my personal view is that the team is a make and break factor, although the teams can be developed over time, of course. We have actually invested in a company that do assessments of teams.
Okay.
And in all investments we do, we use that company's technology to assess the teams, to find the strengths and weaknesses and so on. So we're trying to eat our own dog food.
Okay.
And that's been really useful. I mean, you cannot predict success, but maybe you get some kind of basis for further discussions and so on. So that's been really useful. But the team is super important, of course.
Okay. And then is it good to have a team with a how would you say, with a very similar focus or skill set, or something which is very different, like very diverse team? Like what could be a better way for startup to formulate a team, like a team of marketers who are all a marketing driven company? Just
Well, in our Stockholm fund, we did an analysis of all our investments in trying to find some kind of predictors whether we're going to succeed or not. And one of the predictors is that if the team members have good experience and good knowledge about the market where we're going to operate, that's a big thumbs up. That's something that's really going to predict if the company is going to succeed or not.
okay,
So being knowledgeable in the market you're aiming for, that's super important.
Okay, so subject matter expertise is great to, if that is resident in the team, it increases the chances of that team becoming investable.
And also attitude, of course. I mean,
okay, let's go there.
Yeah, I mean, it's super important to have the right attitude and really to have, skin in the game. I really want to do this and do nothing but this and really succeed almost at whatever cost.
Okay.
I mean, you can train people for skill, but it's very difficult to train them for attitude and energy and willingness to win.
Okay. So really interesting points. I'll try to summarize it for our entrepreneurs who are listening in. Joachim made 3 great points about teams. We started this with that the subject matter expertise, if the field that you're operating in, let's say if you're a medtech startup, think about that. It'll increase your chances of getting funded. Skin in the game, like how committed you are to building this venture, how long can you run with this? And then the third thing, which is the soft side, like passion, attitude, and your energy to build this. So that's a good summary for everyone. Let's move on. So team then is a crucial factor. How would you say so entrepreneurs, okay, so I've seen thousands of pitches as well. So there are some entrepreneurs who create a very modest pitch, like I'm doing this, we are going to build this over 1 year, 2 years. So it's a modest build-up roadmap. But then there is another team which is passionate about a big global problem. They have identified a big market opportunity. How big an opportunity needs to be for the VC to go after it? Should startup build a big opportunity case and a very ambitious future, or should they be on the realistic or realism side when they are pitching to a VC?
Well, what we would like to see in the dream scenario is, of course, that a company can be worth 1 billion Swedish kronor. I mean, it would be really interesting to see. I mean, companies going for big market that they can take a big chunk of and be worth a lot of money. I mean, the VC way of working is that quite a few companies, they go belly up. You get nothing back, but you really want to have a few 10, 20% big hits. And in order to find them, you need to invest in companies that have huge potential, although it is, of course, huge risk as well.
Okay. Got it. And typically when startups approach Almi Invest, so we talked about that website could be a good route in. How long does the process take usually for a startup from getting a foot in the door to becoming funded or not funded out of the process? Is it a lot of hands-on meetings, like just trying to understand the process for the entrepreneurs?
Yeah, that again is very difficult to answer. But I would say that the better the preparation, the shorter the process. I mean, if you really have done your pitch deck, what is the team, why is the team winning, what is the market, how they're going to conquer the market, what is the technology, what is the finance. If you know everything, it's going to be so much smoother. So that is my recommendation. Do the preparation. But if you're unsure about the preparation and exactly what should be included or not, give us a call or give any other investor a call to get some early feedback.
Okay. Okay.
And then we have almost weekly investment committee meetings in Almi Invest.
Mm-hmm.
So we try to manage the deal flow as quickly as possible. But sometimes, like during the Corona, we've been more busy than ever. And during those, I mean, it's been crazy. I also think that because you don't travel anymore, you don't commute to work, you just sit and look at the screen. It's very boring, but it's also very efficient, at least for half a year or so. So we've been super productive. But right now we're going back to the office and we need to reinvent our network and meet people again because that's very important to us. So
please go.
Yeah, so it's been crazy times. We've been breaking all the records. I mean,
let's go a little bit there.
Yeah, let's talk about the pace. We do one transaction a day.
Okay.
And one transaction is investing in a new company, an add-on investment in an existing portfolio company, or an exit.
Okay.
So basically one transaction a day. So of course we have been maybe too busy and investing in too many companies, but it's been a crazy year. And also about a year and a half, we got an additional 400 million Swedish from the Swedish government in order to make sure that the startups can get additional funding during the Corona period.
Okay, so and how is the due diligence journey for startups? Do you think startups should be due diligence DD ready before they approach you? What kind of preparation they can do to make the actual investment flow faster?
Yes, I think it's good to prepare to at least in the minds go through what is it the DD, what is expected, and so on. Because if they have a really good pitch and they attract a lot of interest, of course, we would like to look more into the company. And then they need to be ready. If not, it's going to be a slower process. But then again, they need to do first thing first. I mean, they shouldn't focus too much on getting all the documents, all the data together in a fantastic data room before writing the pitch deck. But then again, the whole idea about pitching to VC is to get to the DD phase. So they need to make sure that is going to work too. And that can be a lot of work.
Understood.
I mean, when my previous employer, Bisnode, we were acquired by Dun & Bradstreet, an American company, and that DD process took almost 7 months.
Okay.
And there was like 20 lawyers full-time during that period. Okay. So a DD process, although prepared, can take a lot of time. Luckily, our DD process is much faster, much cheaper, and much more fun than that.
But given the fact that there are co-investors, maybe there is something which could. So I think it's good that you mentioned that the startups need to be ready on that side. You mentioned something when you were discussing the one transaction per day. It could be that you invest in a new startup or go ahead with a already invested startup. Do you typically do follow-on investments in the cases that you invest in the first go? And like, how far do you go in the journey with the startup?
So for our regional funds, we say we invest 2 to 5 million in the first round, and then we might have another 5, 6, 7, 8 million for follow-up investments. So we try to have funds available also for follow-up investments. But then again, we're an early stage investor, so we invest the majority of our money in the early stages.
Okay.
And then, of course, if the company is raising a lot of money, 50 million Swedish or 100 million Swedish, maybe we're not the right investor anymore. Then there are other investors that might be more suitable for the company.
Okay, so the typical, what I read from here is that the typical scenario would be that you will be one of the first investors on the journey, but typically not the second or the third one. Like if you're already going to a fat seed or a Series A, and you have not had Almi Invest on your journey, then it's too late for them to come to you.
Yeah, correct. Basically correct. I mean, we're often one of the first. Maybe they have a business angel first, for example, or family and friends and so on.
Yeah.
But we're often one of the first investors.
Okay. Really good. You also talked about, because I'm scribbling these points that you're making, really interesting conversation on so many different dots right here in front of me. You talked about that you had a big investors network, like more than 1,000 that you mentioned. What does this typically look like? Is it like angels, or do some other VCs are a part of it? Like, how does this look like?
Yeah, it's actually a combination of everything.
Okay.
And we have collected all the possible co-investors based on previous investments and also interest from, for example, business angels. So a typical case might be that one of the companies are looking for additional funding, and then we can ask the company's permission for asking in our network if we have anyone who would be interested in funding the company.
Got it.
So it can be a great resource for companies.
And
it is also very great. It's a great resource for us because we're always looking for co-investors.
Yeah. And how do you typically keep this network intact? Is it like you have some events with this network, or is it like an informal group? How has the situation changed during the COVID with all the physical events going off the
It's been a very unphysical network the last year or so.
Okay.
But this is more of a, maybe not so much in networking, but more of showing what opportunities that are in the market.
Okay. Excellent. Let's talk a little bit about the exit side, if we may. And I'm thinking any story over there, like any exit that you have liked over the year, like has there been a really great startup over all these more than 800 investments that we are talking about? Like, we could take a couple of examples there.
Yeah, I understand for entrepreneurs that getting venture capital is very difficult, but for venture capital, getting the exit is also very difficult.
Okay.
I mean, investing in a company is kind of an easy part. Getting the return on investment is the hard part. So that's very important for us, of course, to make sure we can sell the company, or at least sell our shares in the company, in order to get our funds back. And of all the companies we've invested in, a few of them have been really successful. MIPS, the helmet technology company.
Okay.
We have Tobii Technology. We have Neo Technology. All of them unicorns, at least in Swedish kroner. It's been really good. And right now we have invested in a company called Renewcell.
Okay.
They take existing clothes, tear them down into atoms, and then they can create magically new clothes again. And that's been a really good investment. It's a public company right now.
Okay.
So we have quite a few really good investments, but we would like to have some more. So maybe we have some entrepreneurs right now on the call that can be the next unicorn, and we would be happy to talk to them.
Certainly. So advice to the community here, you can write a bit about your idea, and you can also send an email afterwards to Startup Grind, and if there are any questions, we can probably take there, or just go to, as Joachim was saying, go to Almi Invest website, read out the guidelines, prepare your pitch the way they have advised there, and go ahead with it and see where it takes you. I think, Vinod, if you could compile the questions in a minute or two, we could start taking the questions, because I see a lot of chat building up on the side, so we can go directly into the audience question. I had one point, because you were talking about EU and then government initiative of funding and putting money in. Is there any guideline that comes with EU and government-based funding when you get that money? Like, for example, one of the big things in Horizon is that, as you said, green tech. So yes, there is a green tech fund, but another is AI, for example. So is there some directive or some sort of focus that comes with when you get the funding that this needs to go? Yeah.
Correct. If you get money from EU, you're more limited than if you raise money from a traditional limited partner.
Okay.
For example, we can only do early stage.
Okay.
And another example is, the limit, how much we can invest in each company. That is limited. So and also we should be where the market fails, so to speak. If there is a market failure, state-based VC firms can be active. So if you have commercial money for something, we shouldn't really be involved. But if there is a lack of commercial money, we should be involved. So there are quite a few rules that you have to adhere to if you raise EU money, that you don't have to do otherwise.
Okay, that's a very interesting point. Does it make it any different for investors, for startups who get investment from Almi Invest due to you being backed by EU and the state, like in terms of reporting requirements or something, or is it just like another VC? Yeah.
We really strive to make sure that for the entrepreneurs, we're just another VC.
Okay.
And then we try to take care of the administration in-house.
Okay.
But then of course, for example, we cannot invest ourselves. We need a co-investor. That is kind of, a limitation for the company. But for the majority of them, we did analysis of all our companies like a year ago, and over 90% of them recommend Almi Invest as an investor. So we do have a really good track record on the market.
That's great. Excellent. Vinod, are we ready with the questions? You can just jump in the call as soon as you're ready so that we can take these points to Joachim and get some feedback. So should I put you on if you can write on the chat if it's okay? Yeah. Brilliant. Yes. Okay. So I'm bringing Vinod in. The format will change a bit. He'll start with the audience questions that have come in. And so Vinod, your presenter mode is going on. Vinod is helping Startup Grind with strategic initiatives. So.
Okay, cool.
Okay,
Hi,
can you see me?
Yes,
sure.
We can see you.
Hi.
Excellent. Yes. Hi, Joachim. Thank you so much for that session. That was very insightful. We've had a packed house today, and I must say the chat's been an absolute waterfall. So it's been it's been multitasking here, listening to what you have to say and trying to compile the questions. We're short on time, so I've compiled this, aggregate this as best possible. So. What are the parameters important for Almi Invest to reach a go-ahead decision for early stage investments? And a follow-on question is customers or a complete product in case of hardware products to make an investment decision?
Yeah, again, I would like to say go to the website and have a look at the pitch your startup, because there's so much valuable information in there. And if you have a good team and a good product and a great market, and we have a good co-investor, I'm pretty sure we're going to be interested in the company.
Okay. So does Almi help in preparing and the second question to that is, if the discussion with Almi Invest is unsuccessful, is there any criteria for applying again?
Okay. So let's start with the exit question. And the exit is, of course, very important for us. I mean, it's our owner agenda. We need to sell our shares at some point in time. So we often work with the entrepreneurs and many partners across Sweden in order to prepare and execute the exit. So, of course, we've done so many exits, and I think we're very experienced in doing exits, and it's important for us to do the exit. The other one is, can you reapply again, and what are the criteria? I think when you have talked to an investment manager, ask for advice. I think that is the best thing to do. because it might be so many different things. If you're in clean tech or in app business or in medical technology, so I can't really give a general guideline, but ask for advice. That's the best thing.
Okay. So what factors play a determining role when looking at the ownership share requested by Almi?
I would say it's a combination of how much money the company is looking for, how big the market is, how much money they're going to need over time, an assessment of similar companies. I mean, we've seen so many companies over the years, and also the co-investors. So it's kind of a negotiation. And there's always some kind of balance between, how much money is needed over time. Are we the right investor? And we always take a minority share. I mean, we want the entrepreneurs to keep as much of the company as possible in order to have the right incentives. But then again, we don't want to value the companies too high, because that can be very bad for the company in the long run. It might be difficult to raise the next round. So you need to find a balance here. We would like to be very generous to the entrepreneurs, but I think it's also important for entrepreneurs to be generous to investors, because if there's an imbalance in the ownership, it's not good for the company in the long run.
Absolutely.
If one part is very unhappy with the arrangement, it's not going to be good. So my advice is to all parties to find a good balance in the ownership structure.
Thank you for that. That's very logical advice. Okay, so a more generic question. What's your personal investment thesis?
I'm not sure I understand the question. What do you mean by investment thesis?
So what are the aspects that you look at when your key criteria when considering investments for you personally?
For me, I mean, I would like to be blown away by the vision, what the company is trying to accomplish. And I want to really see that we have a team with some kind of product or solution that really wants to make a change, make a statement, make something happen. I want to say, wow, this is super exciting. I want to be part of this journey. I think that's the most important thing. And then you need to take a few steps back and look into reality. Can they really execute? Do they have the right product? Can we find the right investors? Can we find the right financing, and so on? But to be blown away. And I think that's going to be something all the entrepreneurs need to think about. How can they pitch the company, the famous elevator pitch, in a very short way to get attention?
The stars, but have your feet planted firmly on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, you need to get people's attraction, whatever you do.
Sure.
I think that's a very, very good balance that you talk about, that great vision, but then the ability to achieve that. Because if the vision is just there as a presentation, it won't get you anywhere. So you need to be hands-on.
Yes, and not too much corporate bullshit. That we're going to change the world here and change the world there. It also needs to make sense.
Sure. Okay.
Got it.
So what markets do you think are the trends of the future?
Ooh, that's a very difficult one. It seems like the big companies, Microsoft and Amazon and Apple and Netflix and everyone, they're kind of taking all the market and eating all the market share. But I still think there is a lot of room for impact investment and for companies that are doing some kind of customization in the future and trying not to be like everyone else. But then again, it's super difficult. We have a lot of companies in the life science sector that are really promising. Not sure if anything of this makes sense, but try to be different. I would say that. Find something else. Find something exciting.
Okay. So
but of course, tech is always going to be big.
Sure. So a good question to build on that question all the way from Singapore. So SEB Green Tech was set up in Singapore, and there seems to be a lot of green tech players with a sustainability focus. So there's two parts to this question. In view with the entry of private VCs, what role does Almi Invest want to play as a government VC?
We would like to be a complement to the private investor. We want to be where the private companies are not. And if you look at the VC market in Sweden, the vast majority of all the money are in Sweden, or is in Stockholm. And we are all over Sweden, and we have maybe 10% of all the funds is allocated to Stockholm. So we would like to complement the private market. Our mission is not to compete with them. So we have a green tech fund too, and we would like to complement where the private market is not very active.
Okay. And the second part of the question is, does Almi Invest provide its investees with strategic networks, like connecting into other government entities like the Swedish Energy Authority?
Yes, we can do that too. Our green tech fund is funded partly by Energimyndigheten, the Swedish Energy Authority.
Okay.
But I would say the most important thing is probably our network of investors for the entrepreneurs.
Okay. And I think, is it safe to assume that that network extends beyond just the impact investors? Because there was another
correct.
question about that.
Yeah,
okay.
It's high and low, it's big and small, it's basically everything.
Excellent. So I think that addresses quite a few.
There are a couple of new questions emerging.
Yes.
I just saw something here.
I have that one. In fact, it's interesting because at least two people have worded it. So I'm going to ask the question. So you did mention that your investments look across all sectors, but there's specific questions around crypto and blockchain, and at least two people have referred to this as sectors. So what's Almi Invest view on investment into these sectors?
We actually have a long list of the sectors that we did not invest in.
Okay.
And that particular sector is right now under scrutiny. So we're looking into that, whether or not we should really invest in that sector.
Okay. That's fair. Okay. How do you see entrepreneurship ecosystem compared to the rest of Europe? So do you think it's easier to raise, for a startup, is it easier to raise money in Berlin or in Stockholm?
To be honest, I have no idea if it's easier in Berlin or in Sweden. I don't think anyone has tried that and been able to draw any conclusions. I would say right now, it's a great time to be an entrepreneur in Sweden. The economy has been strong for a long time. There is a lot of money on the market. And I believe the same goes for Berlin. So it's a good opportunity. But when the stock market turns down, things might change dramatically. So for entrepreneurs, they need to play it smart right now because this economy cannot last forever. Well, we have said that for quite a few years, but I think we're going to keep on saying the same thing, that this cannot last forever, and eventually someone will be right.
And Vinod, based on what you were asking, a question that is cropping in my mind, is it usual that other regional VCs come in and chip in the investments in the startups that you have made? Like not just from Sweden, but outside from Europe, Berlin, as he was saying?
Yeah, we have a lot of international investors.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but most of them are, of course, from Sweden. I also saw one of the questions here is, can we can only invest in Swedish companies. So that is a setup in EU. So we can only invest in companies registered in Sweden.
Okay.
And despite we are Sweden's most active investor, despite we can only invest in Swedish companies. And with the most active investor in Nordic, despite only being able to invest in Sweden. And we're the 7th most active investor in Europe, despite only being able to invest in Sweden. So we are super active as an investor, but there is still opportunity for more investments. So I will encourage everyone on the call here right now to have a look at our website, follow us on social media, have a look at Pitch Your Startup, be very well prepared, and you're all very happy to contact us when you think the timing is right.
So when you say investment in Sweden, so it's the domicile of the company. The company needs to be situated, but the founders can be from different parts. So maybe the tech developer is from another part of the world. So but the company itself needs to be domiciled in Sweden.
Yes, and in order for us to manage the money correctly, the growth should be in Sweden. But you can have developers anywhere. But it should support the Swedish ecosystem, the Swedish regional growth. So you cannot just have a shell company in Sweden and everyone is in Spain enjoying the sun.
Okay. So just conscious of time, I think we have one good question to round off the discussion. There's a statement often heard: the best time for startups to raise money is when they don't need it. What's your take on this statement?
Yeah, I think that is a very good statement. But I would say that the right opportunity to raise money is when you have an opportunity to raise money. And then you should do it if you're really looking for the journey to an exit, because you never know what's going to happen.
Okay. Brilliant. We are at the end of the session. Do we have something more, or
I think I've captured most of it. A lot of the questions I think Joachim has already covered. And I believe there's a whole set which can be addressed by looking at their website. I think we have covered the rest.
Open to invest in startup in aerospace sector. Is aerospace a sector that you invest in? We will just round
Not
off.
sure if we have any investments in aerospace, but maybe this can be the first one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
It sounds very expensive though.
Okay. Joachim, thank you so much for being here, and to Almi Invest to be here at Startup Grind. We really had a very interesting session with so many interesting learning points all over the place. So that's what I like, because we talked about exits, how the pitch should look, how should founders be there, what's early stage. All these are very difficult questions, as you're saying, because there is never an ideal case, because every startup scenario is very different. So thank you for being here, for being patient and being open about sharing your views. Like to thank the community here who have raised some very interesting questions. Thank you, Scott and Patrick. I see you last on the line. So thank you all for being here. And
thanks for having me, and good luck everyone on the call.
Thank you so much. Everyone, next week we are having a Voy event on at the same time. So see you there. Have a great evening and enjoy the weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.